All right, good morning guys, and today I've got a 2017 F-150 right here behind me, and this thing is in desperate need of some rear brake pads. You'll see in just a second when I pull the wheel off. These brakes are almost metal to metal. So what I'm going to be doing today is replacing pads and rotors in the rear, and this model of F-150, it does have the electronic parking brake, so that's something to where I've seen some people struggle with that as far as how to release the electronic parking brake. So I'm going to go over all that with you guys in this video. So if you're trying to do this job yourself, you'll be able to get it done no problem. I'm also going to be going over the torque specs for everything with you guys. So you'll be able to find everything you need in this video. I'll put timestamps down in the description. That way, if you guys want to skip to a certain part, just check the description and you'll be able to find what you're looking for. So let's go ahead and get into it. And here's a quick little view of the truck up on the lift, and I couldn't pan to it earlier because I don't have a cameraman. The first thing I'm actually going to do is let's get this wheel off over here on this side and let's see what we're looking at. And by the way, if I look a little tired, I apologize. It's early in the morning, so I came here early to do this video, so I've had a couple of cups of coffee. I'm waiting for that to kick in. So anyway, the first thing that I'm going to want to do is take a 21mm socket, and I'm going to go ahead and get all 6 of these lug nuts off, and we'll get the wheel and tire off and check it out. Alright, so here's everything, and if you notice, these brake pads, as I mentioned to you, are extremely thin. There's almost nothing left of the friction material. The inboard pad actually has a little bit of something, but the outboard pad on the outside is almost worn to nothing. So we're doing pads and rotors, as I mentioned. I know some people would just slap pads on it, but I mean, really, if you want the brake job done right, just do pads and rotors and be done with it. That way you don't have to worry about any noise, vibration, etc. once you're all done. All right, so let's come to the back side of this brake caliper and let's take a look at the electronic parking brake system, which really is just a big motor right here that's screwed onto the back of the brake caliper. So essentially on this system, all it really is there's no parking brake shoes like how you would think of, that when you push the parking brake, it engages the parking shoes on the inside of the rotor. There's none of that. So all it is a motor. You can see right here where it plugs in. And so when you engage the electronic parking brake, there's a little motor inside here that runs down and it locks the caliper and it prevents the wheel from turning. The issue with this when you're doing brakes is that, of course, with an electronic parking brake system like this, you can't just take off the caliper and then take, your standard caliper depressing tool and depress the piston and open up the caliper. It's not going to work. If you do that on this system, you're going to damage this motor if you're even going to be able to do it at all. So what you need to do is you need to put the truck in brake service mode in order to do the rear brakes on this thing. So I went ahead and I took the wheel off of the driver's side as well. That way, just to kind of give you guys a little shot. So you can see the inboard pad has got a little bit left. And the outboard pad here is basically nothing left. Let's go ahead now and let's get inside the truck and put this thing in brake service mode. Once again, brake service mode, all it does is retracts the motor all the way back. That way you can press the piston of the caliper in without damaging the motor. So let's go inside and do that. Okay, so here in the truck, in order to put this thing in brake service mode, it's pretty simple. Down here is the button for the parking brake. You notice if you pull it toward you, it engages the parking brake. If you push it down, it releases the brake. What we want to do is release the brake and put it in maintenance mode. So in order to do that, first push and hold the gas pedal all the way down to the floor. At the same time, push down on the parking brake button. And while you're pushing down on the button and holding the gas pedal all the way to the floor, as you're doing that, come over here, turn the key to the on position, then turn the key off, and within 5 seconds, turn the key back to the on position without starting the truck. So let's see if I can show this to you guys here. So gas pedal down, parking brake button pushed down, key on, key off, and then key on again. Now you can hear the motor working. And parking brake maintenance mode. So we're in park brake maintenance mode now. So you'll see that message on your dash, and then you'll also see that little yellow light down there will be on the whole time you're in maintenance mode. And I almost forgot, let me go ahead and turn the key off. I don't want to drain the battery. You do not have to have the key on the whole time. As you can see, it's going to stay in maintenance mode the whole time until you turn the maintenance mode off. Which, to turn the maintenance mode off, I'll show you later, but all it is it's basically the exact same thing. The only difference is instead of pushing the parking brake button down, you're going to pull it toward you. All right, so we're back out here on the passenger side rear. And before we begin, just a quick little funny story. So we had a customer last year sometime that he tried to do this brake job. Not this customer, it was another one, but he tried to do this job at his house, and he didn't know about the electronic parking brake. And so he tried to release the parking brake by undoing these Allen bolts that hold the motor onto the caliper. And he tried to mess with this motor somehow, and he ended up destroying the whole caliper and the motor, and he had to tow the vehicle in on a flatbed and then pay us to do the work. So it pays to know about the maintenance mode for sure. All right, so step one is we're going to want to undo these two bolts. They're 13 millimeter, and they're the two bolts that hold the caliper to the caliper brackets. So you'll notice here that, look, I started to break this bolt loose, but the actual slide pin on the other side is turning as well, so that's not going to work. So what I'm going to want to do is grab a hold of this slide pin to prevent it from turning. I'm just going to take some channel locks. This is the easiest way here. You just need something to grab it a little bit. Now what you're going to want to do is don't take out one bolt completely until you've loosened both of them. Trust me, that way, for example, if you take this one all the way out and then you try to break this one loose, the whole caliper is going to swivel. So break them both loose. All right, they should be pretty loose now. Let me get these both out of the way here. Set these bolts to the side. Now I got my brake caliper hanger ready to go. That way I can hang this so it's not dangling by the brake line. So just kind of wiggle this guy off. And I'm just going to kind of hang it there on the leaf spring for now. This guy definitely got his money's worth out of this set of brake pads. What do you guys think? Man, I'm trying to find a spot to attach my little light so you guys can actually see what I'm doing, but man, there's no metal on these trucks anymore. Real metal, that is. Next step is just to remove the pads, so just kind of easiest way is stick a screwdriver in here and pry it out. Same thing over here. Oh, there goes the shim. And the new brake pads should come with shims, so I'm not too worried about it. Now, once you remove the caliper and the pads, what you're going to want to do is check these slide pins. Make sure that they can move freely like this. So check both of these. If you get one or both of these that are seized or stuck, basically they don't move at all, then that's something that's definitely going to need to be addressed later. You're going to need to remove these, clean out inside the caliper. And what we want to do now is work on getting this rotor off. Now, in order to get this off, there's no fasteners that hold it in. It just slides over the hub here. A little bit of rust here, so we'll see how easy it comes off. Now, in order to get this rotor off, all you got to do is take a dead blow hammer and just hit it like you mean it a few times. And that's it. Now, when you remove the brake rotor, you're going to want to inspect the surface of the wheel hub. If you've got a lot of rust, then you're going to want to take a wire wheel or some sandpaper or something and get all that rust off before you put the new rotor on. This one's actually not too bad. It's just a small amount of surface rust. I'll probably just take a Scotch-Brite pad and just kind of scrub the surface real quick. We're in Texas, so there's not too much rust here. All right, now I'm gonna hit it with some brake clean. Once again, you don't have to be absolutely perfect about getting every last single speck of rust off, but what you wanna do what you want to make sure is that you make sure that the surface of the hub is completely flat, that the rotor sits all the way flat. So that's why you want to get as much of it off as you possibly can. Otherwise, as this is spinning fast, you know, 70, 80 miles an hour going down the highway, hit the brakes, you know, you don't want any vibration. Okay, now here it is. You don't have to polish this to a mirror-like finish or anything like that, but just feel with your finger, make sure everything feels flat. You don't feel any raised spots or anything like that, so should be fine. Okay, now let's talk real quick about the parts I'm going to be using to do this job. So I'm actually using Akebono brake pads, and I'm using these ultra high carbon rotors. I got these from XL Parts. Now, as far as these pads, I would definitely, if I were you, I would go with either Akebono or maybe a Motorcraft brake pad, which is the original pad. I'd stay away from the cheap, you know, $30, $40 pads from AutoZone and O'Reilly. Just avoid those guys. They're not going to last as long. They're going to possibly make noise and a lot of brake dust and all this type of stuff. So get a good quality pad. Akebono is great. Akebono is actually the OE supplier to some makes and models. Like I know Honda pads, if you go to the dealership and you get original Honda brake pads, they're going to be Akebono, and there's some other manufacturers that are the same way. So this is good stuff here. It's going to last a long time with minimal noise, minimal brake dust, so that's what you want to do. And also, if you open it up, it's going to come with new hardware, so we can get rid of the old hardware and put new stuff on. So the old hardware, take the old screwdriver and hammer, hit it off. 1, 2. And once again, about rust. So before you slap the new hardware on, try to get rid of as much rust as you possibly can on here. This one's not too bad, but I'll go ahead and scrub it down a little bit and hit it with some brake clean. Now the new hardware, when you go to put it on, you want the tall part that's sticking up, you want that toward the back of the vehicle. What I usually do is just kind of line it up and then kind of put it on the front first and then roll it back like so. Make sure it's fully seated. Do the same thing here. Make sure the long part is facing back toward you, and then get the short part on first. Kind of angle it, and then push and roll it on like that. Push it all the way up in there. And boom, there you go. Now let's go ahead and inspect the slide pins real quick. So I'm just going to kind of pull back on the rubber boot, slide this little pin out. And there's plenty of grease on here, guys. Plenty of grease on here. It looks good. The slides were moving perfectly before, so I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm not even going to add any more grease. Let me check this one up here. This one, the boot's a little bit stuck. I'm going to try to get that boot off of the slide pin without damaging the boot here. There. Alright, check this one out. Yeah, lots of grease, guys, and these slide pins moved very well before, so I'm actually just going to leave these alone. I'm not even going to mess with it. Now, if you need to apply any lubricant to these slide pins, the black stuff that comes in the little packs with the brake pads, sometimes that's really good to use on here. Otherwise, this Permatex, this is the purple stuff, part number 24125. Now, everyone seems to have a different opinion when it comes to brakes as far as where you actually need to put lubricant. And I've seen all types of things. People say, I've even seen some people put lubricant here, which is ridiculous. Don't ever do that. Some people will opt to put some lubricant here on the brake hardware. I don't do that really. Once again, everyone has a different opinion and everyone has a reason why they do what they do. So if you guys do it a certain way, feel free to leave me a comment. Let me know how you do it. But I don't put any lubricant here personally. I just make sure that the hardware is new and clean and put the pads on like that. The only place that I put lubricant is on the slide pins, and that's it. If you put any lubricant here, I'm not saying you're wrong or anything. I'm kind of the opinion of if you put a bunch of lubricant here, it's going to attract dirt. And over time, it's going to cause a buildup that's actually going to be counterproductive. Okay, rotor goes on next. Now this next step is going to save you guys a lot of headache. So as you see, the rotor is kind of loose, right? Because when you when you torque the wheel down, that's actually what holds the rotor flat in place. So if you just leave the rotor like this, then when you put the pads on and try to put the caliper on, it's going to be kind of a pain because this is going to be trying to fall off and it's going to be throwing you off when you put the caliper on. So what you want to do is hold it on all the way and take one of your lug nuts and screw it all the way onto the stud. Just hand tight, don't use any impact or anything like that, but just screw it on hand tight. That way you can keep the rotor from falling off. And as you can see, I think my stud is a little bit too long for my lug nut. So I'm just going to take a wrench. This is an 18 millimeter, and I'm going to use the open side, stick it on the stud. I mean, not the open side, the box end, my bad. Screw it on there. And now my rotor is not going to try to come off on me. So I'll just leave this on here temporarily, and then once I install everything, I'll take it back off. All right, now we're going to get the pads on. So here is the set of pads here. They come with a shim on the back of either side. Make sure that your pads have a shim on the back, otherwise it'll squeal and make noise. These are the same, so you can put either pad on whatever side, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that this little groove obviously fits over your brake hardware. And once again with the lubricant, some people put lubricant on the shims, but you really don't need to put any lubricant here unless there's no shim. Then you need to put lubricant, but as long as there's a shim, don't put any lubricant here, just leave it like that. Now right here on the face of the caliper piston, if there's any major rust, make sure to knock it off. There actually was a little bit of rust here on this part, and I went ahead and knocked it off with the Scotch-Brite pad. And believe it or not, the tool that I'm actually going to use to push the piston back into the caliper is this El Cheapo Maddox. Anyway, I got it from Harbor Freight, but I've never had to use anything different on these, so it'll work fine. It has all the little adapters and everything you'll need. But before we press the brake caliper piston back, one very important thing, come under the hood and see the brake fluid reservoir. Check where your brake fluid level is at. I can kind of see the line right there where it is. But what I always do is I unscrew the cap and I just kind of leave it loosely on top, just in case if when you're pressing the piston back, if the fluid level rises too much, it'll actually be able to overflow out of the container instead of building up pressure in the container, which from what I'm seeing, I don't think the level is high enough to really worry about, but still you want to do this just in case. And if you do get some brake fluid that spills out of the reservoir when you press the piston back in the caliper, then all you got to do is just wash it off with some water. Brake fluid cleans up easy with water. So this is kind of my setup here. So I just used the largest adapter in the kit to push against the piston. All right, once you start feeling resistance, then stop. Go back the other way. And we're gonna get this tool out of there. All right, the brake caliper is ready to be reinstalled here. So let's go ahead and slide it back on there. And we'll get our bolts started by hand. Now you'll notice on the bolts, there's a little bit of blue Loctite on the threads from the factory. But I can tell you that you don't need to put any Loctite on these bolts, I promise you. They're not going to come off if you torque them. And let's get these bolts snug. And then after we get them snug, then we'll go in for the torque. Okay. Now the bolts for the caliper, they're going to get torqued to 24 foot-pounds. And that's it for this part right here, so we'll get the wheel on. Okay, let's get this wrench off. Get the wheel on. Now I'm just going to lightly tighten all these lug nuts, and then I'll go in for the torque as soon as we lower the truck down, which the torque, by the way, is 150 foot-pounds on these lug nuts. Just if you do this up in the air and then you wait to torque it until you get it on the ground, make sure you don't forget, otherwise you're going to have a real bad day if you lose a wheel on the highway. And over here on the left side, of course, it's the exact same process. The only difference between the right side and the left side is that the shock absorber here on the left side, it kind of goes behind the brake caliper, whereas on the opposite side, the shock goes the other way. But it really doesn't interfere with you in any way. There's still plenty of room here, so you're not going to have any issue getting tools in here. Now let's do the old switcheroo. And there we go. All right, it's time to torque the wheels. So we're going to do 150 foot-pounds on each lug nut. All right, I've gone ahead and torqued this wheel to 150 foot-pounds as well. Let's go inside the truck and turn off the maintenance mode. To get this thing out of maintenance mode, instead of pushing down on the parking brake button, we're going to pull up on it. So, foot on the gas pedal, hold the gas pedal all the way down, pull up on the parking brake lever button, key on, key off, and then key on again. And as soon as you do that, you should hear the parking brake motors coming back to their regular position. And our yellow light that was down there underneath the tack has gone off. And we're not in maintenance mode anymore. So that's all there is to it. Last thing I would do is just step on the brake pedal a few times to just pump up the caliper piston, and you'll feel it once it gets hard, like right there. And if you start up the truck and put it in drive or reverse, you're going to have no brakes until this thing pumps up, and you'll probably wreck the truck. So definitely don't forget to pump up the brakes first. Lastly, make sure that your cap for the brake fluid reservoir is fully tightened. If any brake fluid overflowed, definitely wash it off with water. And actually, if it's gotten to the point where it's all the way to the top, you may want to suck some out. But as you can see, I'm right below the max line, so we're good to go on that brake fluid. All right, guys, so that's all for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any questions or comments, please just leave them down below. And just like and subscribe as well if you guys enjoyed the video. So once again, I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.